You find yourself caught in a relationship that feels all-consuming. At times, it dazzles with the brilliance of passion, electric, vibrant, alive with connection. The chemistry feels undeniable, like the world contracts to just the two of you in moments of fiery intensity. But then, just as suddenly, the same connection turns into a labyrinth of tension. Every word feels loaded, every glance sharp as a knife. Small misunderstandings spiral into conflict, and the simple wish for space or silence weighs heavy with guilt, as if wanting air is a betrayal. Yet you remain, not out of weakness nor out of convenience, but because something deep inside insists this love is worth the struggle, that the turbulence is the price to pay for something meaningful. This paradox is one many find themselves living without even realizing it. Toxic relationships rarely reveal their true nature immediately. They arrive wrapped in promises, care, and warmth. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the lines blur. What began as affection mutates into control. What once was care shifts into suspicion. Connection deteriorates into dependency, and in this fog, clarity slips away. Instead, there is a pervasive feeling of owing, a sense that to love is to diminish oneself. You might have lived this story, or maybe you know someone ensnared by it. The explanations you hear often try to soften the reality. They act this way because they love too much, or it's just insecurity, nothing serious. These justifications cloak what drains your spirit. Relationships where silence feels dangerous, where saying no ignites emotional manipulation, where cold indifference or unpredictable storms follow a simple request. What's most cruel is how such dynamics twist your own perception. Slowly, the doubt creeps in. Am I overreacting? Is the problem me? This distortion of reality is one of the most dangerous poisons. It erodes self-confidence and convinces you that surviving emotionally is the same as loving. This is not a condemnation, rather, it's an invitation. A call to examine, without judgment, the shadows that masquerade as love but corrode our emotional well-being. Together, let's uncover the 7 psychological signs that signal toxicity in a relationship, not through platitudes, but through uncomfortable truths, because sometimes what liberates us is simply seeing clearly what was hidden. Intensity often masquerades as love, but the two are not the same. In many toxic bonds, the emotional landscape feels like a roller coaster, peaks of euphoric passion followed by crashes of despair. Jealousy is mistaken for proof of care, fiery reconciliations celebrated as the ultimate testament to connection. But intensity alone is a poor marker for true love. The mind is drawn to these extremes for profound reasons rooted deep within. Childhood wounds imprint patterns of emotional experience. If early life was marked by instability, where affection and pain were inseparable, then the psyche learns to equate love with turmoil. The pain becomes familiar, almost comforting, and what should be a sanctuary instead becomes a battleground. The brain, craving the chemical rush of dopamine, becomes addicted to cycles of conflict and resolution, craving the highs and tolerating the lows as part of the thrill of loving. This creates a dangerous illusion that depth requires suffering, but real love grows steadily, quietly, often without fireworks. Calmness and consistency are its true signatures. This addiction to emotional chaos traps us in a cycle where pain is mistaken for proof of authenticity. The more intense the storm, the harder it becomes to let go, because what is truly being clung to is an old wound seeking healing through repetition. Then comes the impulse to fix the other. You begin to see your partner not as a person, but as a project, someone to be saved, healed, or changed by your love. This savior complex is an emotional snare disguised as generosity. You tell yourself, if I love enough, they will change, or if I just wait, things will get better. Yet, this narrative is less about them and more about you. It is a reflection of your own unmet needs and unresolved inner conflicts projected onto another. When you suppress your insecurities, you unconsciously seek to heal them through someone else. When you hide your anger, you might find yourself with a partner who embodies that rage, hoping your patience will calm the storm. This dynamic is a trap. The more you sacrifice, the more trapped you feel. Frustration grows alongside hope. When the relationship doesn't improve, self-blame creeps in. I didn't try hard enough. But the harsh truth is that you are caught in an emotional battlefield, fighting ghosts not your own, trying to save someone who may not want to be saved. In the process, your own identity starts to dissolve. The loss of self is one of the most insidious effects of toxicity. At first, you remember who you were, the opinions you held, the dreams you cherished, the boundaries you set. But gradually those fragments fade. You become unsure of what you like, what you want, even how you feel. The person staring back in the mirror is unfamiliar. This erosion of identity is not sudden but slow and stealthy. Your life begins to revolve entirely around the other's moods, crises, and needs. You edit yourself constantly to avoid conflict, relinquishing bits of your autonomy until nothing feels truly yours anymore. This phenomenon is a symbiotic fusion, where two individuals lose themselves in an illusory unity. The ego retreats under constant pressure to please and placate. Your authentic self becomes repressed, replaced by a version designed solely to keep the peace. You change your appearance, withdraw from friends, abandon passions, all for the sake of harmony, yet inside, emptiness swells, a quiet void where your essence once lived. Trying to reclaim yourself feels selfish and guilt-ridden because the need for autonomy is recast as rejection. This internalized guilt becomes a powerful tool of control, silently enforcing conformity and silence. Guilt in toxic relationships is a silent jailer. In healthy partnerships, boundaries and solitude are natural. Silence is not a weapon, and autonomy is respected as a necessary part of individuality. But in toxic dynamics, these natural needs become forbidden. Wanting space is seen as betrayal. Silence is perceived as abandonment. Independence is selfishness, and guilt, a constant creeping weight, follows. You might feel bad for not responding instantly, for needing time alone, or for enjoying life without constant explanation. This guilt is rarely overt. Instead, it is implanted through subtle emotional manipulation. A look, a silence, an accusing phrase. It embeds itself deeply, amplified by an inner voice shaped by years of internalized criticism. This punitive inner supervisor keeps you perpetually alert, censoring desires before they are even voiced. You live a curated existence, always cautious, always present, always on guard. The unspoken belief is that to love is to erase yourself. But what if this guilt isn't yours to carry? What if you could reclaim your breath, your space, your being? The sense of emotional responsibility can become suffocating. Beyond guilt for wanting distance, many find themselves feeling responsible for the other's pain, as if their absence would cause irreparable damage. This distorted emotional burden chains you to the relationship. You say, "I can't leave now, they are fragile, broken." You become a caretaker, sacrificing yourself for their survival. But this is a trap of identification and martyrdom. What feels noble can mask a painful disconnect from your own worth. This sense of responsibility is a form of neurotic love, not freely chosen but compelled by fear and emotional dependency. The suffering of the other becomes a silent form of manipulation, binding you through obligation. But here is the hard truth. You are not responsible for healing wounds the other refuses to face. Your presence often delays the inevitable reckoning rather than preventing it. Holding on to this responsibility is reliving old childhood patterns where emotional survival depended on caretaking roles. This leads us to one of the most perplexing paradoxes. Why do we repeat toxic patterns? Why do new relationships so often echo old pain? This is no accident. The mind harbors an unconscious compulsion to repeat, seeking to rewrite the unresolved dramas of childhood. The hope is to heal the past by living it anew, but with a different outcome. You may find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, not out of choice but because they trigger deep-seated memories. The familiar pain feels oddly right, as if only through this repetition can you find closure. Yet this cycle is exhausting and painful. The more you try to change the script, the more trapped you become. You are not living in the present but struggling to heal the past with tools that have long proven ineffective. In this dynamic, pain becomes normalized and toxicity feels like home. Leaving this cycle is terrifying, not just because of fear of loss but because of a profound fear of emptiness. Healing begins with radical honesty, an honest look not just at the relationship, but at yourself. This is no easy task. It requires sitting with discomfort, facing shadows that have been hidden beneath layers of denial and self-justification. Healing starts by acknowledging what was really experienced: the fear, the loneliness, the betrayal, and the subtle erosion of self. It means admitting that love can be painful, that you were hurt, and that some of the pain came not from fate or bad luck, but from a pattern you allowed, consciously or unconsciously, to continue. This honesty is a radical act because it breaks the illusion that toxicity is someone else's fault alone. Instead, it holds space for both accountability and compassion. You recognize the ways you may have enabled or ignored warning signs, while also forgiving yourself for survival mechanisms that once protected you. The truth is never simple or one-sided. To heal, you must embrace the complexity of your story without reducing yourself to a victim or a villain. You reclaim your power through this balanced self-awareness. Reclaiming your identity after toxicity requires cultivating solitude and self-reflection. The silence you once feared is, paradoxically, a necessary sanctuary. It is in solitude that you can begin to hear your own voice again, free from the noise of external demands and emotional manipulation. This process is slow and can feel isolating, but it is vital. Solitude helps dismantle the internalized guilt that has told you your needs are selfish or wrong. In this space, you learn to ask yourself, who am I when I am not defined by others' expectations? What do I want, desire, and believe? This rediscovery may bring up uncomfortable questions and emotions, but it also opens the door to authentic living. You begin to find joy not through approval or connection, but through your own unique presence in the world. This solitude is not loneliness, it is freedom. It is the fertile ground from which your true self can emerge. Boundaries are the next critical pillar in rebuilding your emotional well-being. If toxicity taught you that saying no invites punishment or abandonment, then learning to set boundaries feels like reclaiming a lost language. Boundaries communicate your limits, your needs, and your right to safety and respect. They are not walls to keep people out, but fences that protect your garden so it can grow. Setting boundaries requires courage because it may provoke resistance from others and from your own fears of conflict or rejection. But every boundary you establish is an act of self-love and self-respect. It teaches others how to treat you and models healthy relational patterns. Boundaries also help you identify who is willing and capable of honoring your humanity and who is not. This clarity is painful but necessary. It allows you to step away from destructive cycles and toward relationships grounded in mutual care. Another essential part of healing is learning to distinguish love from neediness or dependency. The emotional codependency that so often emerges in toxic relationships can feel like love, but it is fundamentally different. Codependency arises when one's sense of self becomes enmeshed with another's emotions and needs to such an extent that boundaries dissolve and autonomy vanishes. Healing this requires fostering emotional independence, a capacity to be whole and secure within oneself before entering into connection. Emotional independence does not mean isolation or cold detachment. Rather, it means recognizing that love should be a choice made from abundance, not a desperate attempt to fill a void. When you learn to nurture yourself first, relationships shift from being about survival to being about growth and joy. Healing also means embracing vulnerability without fear. Toxic relationships teach you to armor yourself, to hide your feelings, to present a version of yourself that is acceptable or safe. But true healing invites a return to openness. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of intimacy and trust. Allowing yourself to be seen, flaws and all, requires courage. It requires dismantling the defenses built up over years of pain. But vulnerability is essential to forming new, healthy connections. It creates a space where authentic love can flourish, love that accepts you wholly, not conditionally. This kind of love nurtures your growth rather than constricting it. Forgiveness is a complex and deeply personal part of the healing journey. It is often misunderstood as excusing harmful behavior or forgetting the pain inflicted. In reality, forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, not to the person who hurt you. It is the release of bitterness and the freeing of your own heart from the shackles of resentment. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation or re-entry into the toxic relationship. It is an inner act of peace, a decision to no longer carry the heavy burden of past wounds. Forgiveness allows you to reclaim your energy and redirect it toward healing rather than hurt. It opens the door to compassion, both for yourself and eventually for others as complex human beings. Rebuilding trust after toxicity, both in yourself and others, is a gradual process. Toxic relationships shatter the foundation of trust, leaving you wary, suspicious, and defensive. Relearning trust requires patience and discernment. You begin by trusting your own judgment and intuition again, listening to your inner voice and honoring your feelings. Rebuilding trust with others comes from experience, small, consistent actions that show reliability and respect. It is also important to understand that trust is not absolute. It is earned and can be lost. Healthy skepticism becomes a tool for self-protection rather than fear. Through this process, you cultivate relationships that are safer, more supportive, and more fulfilling. Healing also demands a re-examination of love itself, its meaning, its forms, and its limits. Toxic relationships distort love into something possessive, controlling, and conditional. Part of your journey is to redefine what love truly means for you. Love is not about control or sacrifice to the point of destruction. It is not about losing yourself or enduring harm. True love is grounded in respect, freedom, and mutual growth. It allows you to be fully yourself without fear. It inspires generosity without self-neglect. This redefinition is deeply empowering. It sets a new standard for your future relationships and your own self-regard. Community and support are vital on the path out of toxicity. Healing in isolation is possible, but it is far more challenging. Surrounding yourself with people who listen without judgment, who respect your journey, and who encourage your growth creates a network of safety. Support can come from friends, family, therapists, or support groups. It can be a source of strength when your own inner reserves feel depleted. Connection with others who have survived similar experiences can offer validation and hope. Remember, healing is not a solitary battle. It is a shared human experience. As you move forward, mindfulness and self-compassion become your allies. Mindfulness trains you to stay present, to observe your thoughts and feelings without getting lost in them. This awareness helps break reactive patterns inherited from toxicity. You learn to respond rather than react, to choose peace over chaos. Self-compassion counters the harsh inner critic. It invites you to treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a dear friend. When you stumble or feel weak, self-compassion helps you to rise without shame. It creates an internal environment where growth can happen gently and sustainably. Finally, healing from toxicity is an ongoing journey, not a destination. It requires continual attention, reflection, and care. You will have moments of strength and moments of doubt. There may be setbacks and pain, but each step taken in self-awareness and self-love is a step toward freedom. This journey is not about perfection. It is about becoming whole. It is about reclaiming your right to love and be loved in ways that nurture your spirit. It is about living authentically, courageously, and with an open heart. If you resonate with these reflections, know that your story matters. Your struggle is not a sign of failure, but of deep humanity. The path through toxicity toward healing is challenging but profoundly transformative. You are not alone, and with each moment of clarity, you move closer to the love you deserve, the love that honors your essence and lights your way forward.